The Nanyu players respond, furious. A member cursed the foreign war god guild for their dirty tactics, angry that their brothers had been attacked and their hard-earned boss loot had been stolen. Sister Hai was equally enraged. Gripping her weapon, she called the attackers animals, frustrated they were too cowardly to fight head-on and relied on sneak attacks that made retaliation impossible. Hope was restored when a member announced that official forces had sent the legendary Shadow to assist them. Confident in Shadow's strength, he assured the group they could finally catch the foreign culprits. Moments later, he rushed in with news. Shadow and the officials had already arrived at the riverbank where they usually drank tea. Hearing this, the excited non-Yu players rushed through the ruined city streets toward the river, eager to meet the famous player they had only dreamed of seeing. Shadow's massive skeletal dragon, Osiris, descended. Sister Hai and a female official looked up in awe, terrified and impressed by his epic grade mount. The female official with long dark hair, a wisp of smoke, greeted Shadow alongside Sister Hai, who introduced the Kiaozui Alliance. The official pointed out a strange detail. The attackers had fled in such a panic they didn't even collect the lifespan on the ground. Shadow confirmed her observation, stating the enemies retreated so decisively because they were aware of his arrival. He realized his stealthy approach had been compromised. From his dragon, Shadow deduced the intelligence leak meant there was either a mole in the official ranks, or the enemy had a hidden class that could track him. He asked the official to brief him on the situation in Non-Yue. A wisp of smoke explained the local power dynamic, saying the officials and Sister Hai's guild were the strongest forces. She identified the attackers as the War God Guild, a small faction of mostly foreigners. She revealed the enemy had an assassin with a high-level group stealth skill, which was why officials had struggled to catch them. She noted that, historically, they were a weak group that only engaged in petty theft. The situation escalated when remnants of the magic capital's Black Dragon Guild arrived and joined them. Since this alliance, the War God Guild had gone on a killing spree, making Sister Hai's group their 7th target that day. Shadow considered this information. He remarked the Black Dragon members were too weak to cause such problems alone, concluding there had to be an underlying reason for the War God Guild's sudden rampage. The official agreed, sharing their investigation's results. She said the attackers' motives were abnormal. They slaughtered everyone, even low-level players, and often abandoned valuable lifespan to ensure a safe getaway. She explained this reckless behavior had skyrocketed their kill value, a penalty that locked their ability to level up and made them lose all lifespan if killed. She suspected this self-destructive strategy might be tied to the requirements of a hidden class, validating Shadow's theory. As he listened, Shadow reflected on the game's consequences for murder. He knew accumulating a high kill value halted a player's progression, forced them to drop all lifespan upon death, and also triggered escalating system punishments. The higher the kill level, the more extreme the restrictions. Most concerning, Shadow recalled that reaching such a high kill value risked summoning the Executioner, a terrifying, multi-armed demonic entity. Once summoned, the creature relentlessly pursued the player until they were permanently eradicated. Shadow silently wondered if the War God Guild's goal was to summon this Executioner, though he struggled to see the benefit. Furthermore, he was unsettled by how the enemy had predicted his movements and executed a flawless retreat before he arrived. Searching his memories, Shadow realized only the diviner class could foresee the future. The only known diviner was Theodore, whom Shadow had personally assassinated during the airplane ambush. A chilling realization hit Shadow. He remembered he hadn't used his weapon's special curse to inflict permanent death on Theodore. He deduced someone from Country M must have had a rare item or hidden class that could use the dead, letting them steal Theodore's divination powers. Determined to find the source of the leak, Shadow looked down from his dragon and asked, a wisp of smoke, and Sister Hai for the War God Guild's hideout location. A wisp of smoke said their base was an underground factory called the Blood Slaughterhouse. She warned Shadow against infiltrating, explaining her forces had previously raided it. They found it fortified with high-level traps that stalled them while the enemies easily escaped. Unfazed, Shadow confidently told her to lead the way. He stated that to uncover the enemy's motives and foresight, they only needed to breach the base and capture one member for interrogation. Inside the Blood Slaughterhouse hideout, a sinister red-illuminated industrial facility was actively patrolled by guards. Deep inside the facility, a dark-skinned man with a tribal tattoo and glowing red eyes approached Zentil, the Black Dragon leader. The man asked Zentil if the intelligence he provided was useful. Zentil confirmed the intel was accurate, admitting that Shadow had appeared from the sky just as predicted. He acknowledged that without the tattooed man's early warning, his group would have been slaughtered. Smirking, his red eyes glowing, the tattooed man recited Theodore's original prophecy. He spoke of the pitch-black dragon knight arriving quietly, the lucky ones retreating, and an ominous red star that would descend to obliterate all darkness. He eagerly told Zentil the first part of the prophecy, given by a mysterious lord, had been fulfilled by Shadow's arrival. He insisted that if they accumulated enough kill value, they could summon the ominous star to annihilate Shadow. Standing on a bandaged stump where his leg used to be, the man declared Shadow's death was inevitable. He believed once Great Zia lost its strongest player, the other forces would be defenseless, allowing his lord to lead Country M's elites to wipe them out. Fueled by resentment, he recounted how Shadow and the magic capital officials had driven their guild to the Nanu border and killed Theodore. Now, Shadow had relentlessly cornered them in Nanu with no way out. His face contorted with rage as he vowed to take revenge for all his suffering. He listed his targets, declaring that once Shadow was dead, his first victim would be the young pink-haired witch from the Sky Guild. Blaming Shadow's allies for the loss of his arm and leg, he pictured Lin Qingyu, promising to violently tear out the magic capital official's hair. Finally, his thoughts turned to Captain Anyu, the Zhanghai official, graphically describing what he planned to do to her once they won. Zentil and his men chuckled darkly at the man's gruesome fantasies. Zentil admitted his passionate, violent speech had riled them up. However, Zentil's expression hardened into suspicion. He questioned the man, pointing out a logical flaw. Since Theodore the Diviner had been killed by Shadow, they shouldn't possess new prophecies. Zentil reiterated his distrust, demanding proof the prophecy was real and not a trick to use them as pawns while the foreigner escaped home. The tattooed man smirked, claiming he understood Zentil's doubts because he had had the same ones before he met their lord. To prove his point, the man pulled out a magical card that ignited with red flames, telling the cautious Zentil to watch. Declaring his immediate return to Country M, he activated the card, causing a red spatial portal to materialize above him. A bald guild member recognized the spell as one of Theodore's abilities. To everyone's surprise, a figure in dark, fiery energy stepped out. The tattooed man was stunned, recognizing the figure as the lord he had mentioned. The new arrival, the red-eyed leader, addressed Zentil as a glowing blue holographic screen materialized before the black dragon leader. Zentil stared at the screen in shock. It displayed a live feed of the tattooed man at the Statue of Liberty, with a message confirming he had returned to Country M. Watching the broadcast, Zentil was moved to tears, realizing that teleportation magic across continents was real. The red-eyed leader had used the skill to swap places with the tattooed man. Convinced by this godlike power, Zentil and his subordinates fell to their knees. Awestruck, Zentil pledged his absolute loyalty to the mysterious man, begging him to take them back to their homeland. The red-eyed leader agreed but set a condition. They had to first summon the ominous star and kill Shadow. He then subtly activated his yin-yang harmony skill, a powerful emotional manipulation spell. The mind-altering magic took effect instantly. Zentil and his men's eyes flared with a fanatic red light. Consumed by a manipulated, bloodthirsty rage, they roared their intent to kill, now perfect pawns for the leader's plan. Meanwhile, back on the surface under a cloudy reddish sky, Shadow arrived at his destination with Sister Hai and another non-Yule player. They looked down into a sunken area filled with ominous red mist. The player pointed toward a massive concrete bunker, informing Shadow this was the War God Guild's hideout, the Blood Slaughterhouse. The male player warned Shadow to be careful, noting the enemy's hideout was dangerous and hard to navigate. He explained that the War God Guild kept their outside barrier off to lure enemies inside. Once in, the maze was full of deadly traps. He mentioned a past raid against the Black Dragon leader, Zentil, which caused heavy losses for their forces due to these hidden traps. Shadow corrected him, saying the hideout didn't have an outside barrier at all. It relied entirely on internal traps for defense. Acknowledging the danger, Shadow then asked the player's name. He introduced himself as Unlucky Agwang. Despite his sad nickname, he claimed his luck was good, though a weird curse followed him. His teams often died, bosses went crazy, and teammates always triggered traps. He said the official, a wisp of smoke, sent him as a guide for a good reward. Sister Hai angrily noted that the War God Guild was actually weak, but their strong bunker and cowardly hit-and-run tactics made it impossible for the authorities to wipe them out in a fair fight. The base's internal alarms were also active. Any break-in would alert Zentil, giving the Black Dragon leader enough time to escape before they reached him. Unbothered, Shadow dismissed their worries. He revealed that these hideouts ran on a central crystal. If they took the crystal, the base would become his, leaving the enemies homeless and easy to defeat. Shadow told Sister Hai and Aguang to stay safe outside on the cliff while he went in alone. He stepped forward, but Aguang quickly stopped him. Sister Hai volunteered to guide Shadow, warning that facing the hidden traps alone was a bad idea. Aguang agreed, saying her past experience from the failed mission would help. Shadow accepted her offer to lead. Shadow then told Aguang he didn't want his bad luck ruining the mission. Embarrassed, Aguang defended himself, claiming his unlucky name was just a joke. He argued that surviving this apocalyptic game proved he actually had good luck. Ignoring his excuses, Shadow let them come but warned they had to protect themselves in an emergency. They eagerly agreed and the trio jumped off the cliff, heading toward the bunker's red-lit entrance. A loud system alarm echoed through the red-lit halls of the Blood Slaughterhouse, warning of intruders. Zentil, the Black Dragon leader, looked up at the alarm, his face hardening as he heard the warning. The red-eyed leader asked what was going on. A subordinate assumed it was just local officials returning to die, but Zentil guessed the intruder was Shadow, wondering if his base's traps could stop the famous player. Wanting to be sure, Zentil asked the red-eyed leader to use his foresight. He wanted to know the outcome to decide whether to run or fight. The red-eyed leader agreed. Using his stolen powers, he summoned a glowing red card and activated the Omen of the Star God's skill. A vision appeared above them, showing the exact same prophecy: a black dragon knight arriving, a lucky one escaping, and a red star destroying the darkness. Confused, Zentil noted this was the same prophecy the tattooed man said earlier. Manipulating him, the red-eyed leader explained that visions only show big turning points and won't change until they happen. He convinced Zentil that seeing the same prophecy meant their fates were connected. Falling for the lie, Zentil smiled. He confidently concluded the intruder setting off the alarm was Shadow. Glowing with a red aura, Zentil's ego grew. He proudly declared that since his powers were red, he must be the ominous Red Star. Believing he was meant to win, he boasted that Shadow would die a painful death in his endless traps. Watching his pawn walk into a death trap, the red-eyed leader replied that Zentil could read the prophecy however he wanted. He then stated he would return at the right time and prepared his escape. Using a spatial skill, the red-eyed leader vanished, swapping places with the tattooed man. The crippled man fell out of the red portal, and a clueless Zentil happily welcomed him back. The nervous tattooed man realized his hopes of escaping were gone, used only as a tool to send his lord home. Blind to his fear, an excited Zentil asked him to help kill Shadow, fully believing he was the ominous Red Star. The tattooed man stared at Zentil in terror, knowing Shadow's unstoppable power firsthand. He panicked, realizing his leader was crazy to think they could actually kill him. The trio landed inside the large industrial blood slaughterhouse, surrounded by a thick red mist. Sister Hai stopped the group, warning Shadow this was a deadly trap room where her forces once took heavy losses. Holding a map, she pointed to a path of glowing blue tiles. She told them to strictly follow that route to cross safely and warned against stepping anywhere else. Shadow confidently walked on the blue path, easily passing the safe route. A nervous Aguang followed closely under Sister Hai's guidance. Once they crossed safely, Aguang asked what happens if someone steps on the wrong tiles. Sister Hai explained that hidden spikes would shoot out to stab anyone who misstepped. To prove it, she threw a heavy rock onto a dark, incorrect tile. The rock hit the tile with a loud noise. An awkward silence followed. They stared at the rock, but nothing happened. The trap failed to go off. Shadow asked if she was sure there were traps. Frustrated, she insisted there were, claiming she had been killed 6 times in this exact room before. To prove she wasn't lying, Sister Hai stubbornly stomped on the dark tiles, confused why nothing worked. Aguang apologized for her crazy behavior, suggesting they move on since the traps were broken and safe. Thinking it was safe, Aguang stepped forward onto a normal tile. Instantly, a loud click echoed, and the floor lit up with a red warning glow. Due to Aguang's bad luck curse, deadly black spikes violently shot from the floor. They bypassed Aguang completely and instantly stabbed Sister Hai while she was stomping nearby. Aguang stared in shock, screaming in confusion why his misstep triggered a trap under his teammate instead of him. Sister Hai died instantly, turning into golden orbs. While a guilty Aguang apologized to his guide, Shadow stayed calm, saying they would just wait for her to respawn and return. Looking at the trap, Shadow saw Sister Hai wasn't lying. He explained the enemy must have changed the trap settings, turning the safe path into a deadly one. Realizing old knowledge was useless in this changing maze, Shadow told Aguang to grab Sister Hai's orbs and leave the bunker right away. Zentil and his men were watching them from a hidden room above. Confirming his target was Shadow, Zentil grinned, mocking the idea that they could just turn around and escape his trap. Without pausing, Zentil slammed his fist on a large red button. A loud mechanical noise echoed. Shadow and Aguang were alerted as the floor beneath them suddenly opened up. A huge trapdoor dropped open under their feet, sending both players falling into the depths of the base. As they fell down the dark shaft, Aguang screamed in terror. Shadow stayed completely calm, fixing his posture in the air to prepare for the landing. They hit the bottom. Aguang crashed painfully on his back, but Shadow landed perfectly on his feet. They were trapped in a dark room with bloody walls. As Aguang sat up groaning with a bleeding nose, static crackled through the room. Shadow turned toward the noise. A large screen on the bloody wall turned on. A distorted voice came from a hidden speaker, acting surprised to welcome Shadow into their home. The static cleared, showing a live video of Zentil. Wearing a creepy mask, the Black Dragon leader spoke to Shadow, announcing that he wanted to play a game.